quite a small number. Do I need this for that?
It's entirely up to you. I mean, this picks up pretty well anyway.
Yeah.
But that just to give you a little bit of enhancement, if need be. So it's entirely up to you. It's been set up if you need it.
Here's a question. Can you hear me at the back, or do I need to use that?
I think it's for the camera.
Yeah, you said it's in pickup.
Yeah.
I'm happy to.
I think it's safe. It's not, the audience will hear you fine.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well thanks everyone. My name is Clive Hopper from the Cass Business School. I'm just chairing these first two sessions. We're delighted to welcome Grier from the Warwick Business School. We've got a good turnout here, Grier, and your title on Suitable Case for Creativity I think will follow very well in Neil's plenary session. So with no more ado, over to you, Grier.
Thanks very much. Well, I'd like to tell you a story, I suppose, a case study. It's work in progress, and it's about Warwick Business School and creativity. And I'll set some context, both historically and also organisationally. But I suppose I'm talking about two things. One is pulling back from all the fun and the struggle, etc., of this case, is the theme of organisational change, and the second is transforming individual behaviour. And obviously those two overlap, and that's really what I would like to sort of pull up with. So what I'd like to do is to go through some of the things that have happened in this case at Warwick, and then I'd like to pull out lessons, both about organisational change and individual transformation, and then just a couple of reflections, and then we'll probably have about 5 minutes just to see if you've got any thoughts or comments or questions. And I'm around here for the whole of the day, so I'd be very interested to continue the conversation. So there's a bit of a whistle tour, and I'm going to go relatively fast at this, but hopefully the pictures will give more than the words. So you might think, looking at this kind of Fort Knox building, this is not exactly predestined to be the centre or the hive of creativity. And so at business school, we have econometricians who are rather like auditors who got too excited by accountancy and have retreated back to sort of the safety of numbers. And if you look inside the building, these sort of somewhat Kafkaesque corridors, and if you look from the top, it looks probably more like the Pentagon than the Globe or whatever. So, but then something changed, and whoosh, I wanted to be somebody, so I put my foot on the gas and headed for my future. And I'll come back and talk a little bit more about this as a sort of symbol, really, of what's happening. It's a new logo, and this may not seem particularly important, but you know, I think it was either Wolf or Orange had the phrase, "The design is about values made visible." And so we used to have a black, then we had a red logo, and then we've gone to a blue, which is very appropriate because the rest of the university is blue. So we couldn't show our logo unless it was blue. So now we're blue. And you can see we're very blue. And this came from really an issue about leadership, which is part of what the course is, what the day is about. Mark, new dean 2 years ago, was the managing director of BlackRock, used to work for the IMF, is a world expert on currency and exchange. But then interestingly, when he was at the IMF in Washington, he used to walk across Washington at lunchtime to Folger's and look at some of the original, the first folios of Shakespeare, and he's a world authority on the historical productions of King John. And so as Neil Monarchy was saying, maybe we just don't take first looks at their face value. In the middle, a fantastic colleague, Jonathan Neelands, who I persuaded the Dean to bring in as the first professor of creative education. He's a world authority on a very democratic and transformational way of approaching drama and education, and I make up the three, okay. So what the Dean was asking was that we should change creatively. We should create a new Warwick Business School, which would look at things differently. And the logos, therefore, come in because here's Liechtenstein, here's Warhol. There's several stories about this, but this was done by one of my students. It was one of the prize-winning entries. I'll explain that in a second. She's now in the marketing department at Land Rover. She did art, and then she gave it up to come into business studies, and now she's able to manage both of them. And if you go down those corridors now, those Kafkaesque corridors that I was showing you from about 2 years ago, there's about a 15-foot version of this spread over our atrium, and there's about a sort of 10-foot version of this. And these come from a commission where we, with our new logo, we asked artists to take the logo and to use it in the style of X. We offered them about 10 different artists, and I think about 100 people actually chose their own. Down here we've got the winner of Winners, which was from Liechtenstein. Joe is a commercial designer, and here he used something from a Hungarian artist in London. You probably all quickly picked this up. He saw this as an organic organisation, and of course it's a bee school. This is Rennie McIntosh and the Spirit of Enterprise. We've talked about these two already, and Beverly Ranger, who's sort of starting her career, and with the prize money set up a little business. The idea came out in about one morning, so Tracy Ehrman, and then it took us 7 days, having won sort of one of the top prizes, to actually stitch the fabric onto the canvas. So this to me has become a way of bringing our business colleagues and students and partners into the processes and the craft of the artist and the craftsman. And that is one key thing that we've been doing. But to put it in context, we had a number of things going on which I'll touch on. And the way that we have presented this to our colleagues in terms of a change program is to embed creativity and design in Warwick Business School, to be the leading university-based business school in Europe, and to do things in a very different way. And so Shakespeare, creativity, the pedagogic approach, and writing. And if you go to www.acuk.go, Working Capital, you'll find more stuff about that. So one of the things when I was sort of charged with how do we actually create a new culture and approach and bring in creativity into the school was to think about what we actually have inside. So this echoes what we were just been hearing from Neil, working with one's strengths, with one's assets, etc. So we have the Warwick Arts Centre, which is, I think, the largest art centre outside London. We have music, we have theatre, 2 theatres, one standard, one experimental, music centre, a gallery, a dance room, etc. So we've now built a different kind of relationship with this, whereas the Art Centre was looking out really to the West Midlands communities, of guitar lovers, of opera lovers, etc. Now we've established a relationship between ourselves and the Art Centre. We have had a long relationship with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and we had effectively a kettle, Centre for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, which was a combination of Royal Shakespeare and Warwick, which was really about performance, and something that we developed called open space learning. And again, if you go to the Warwick site, you'll be able to find quite a lot of material about that. So what I worked on for about 2 years was basically building the business plan and some of the pedagogic development for a joint venture which we have now for 10 years with our RSC, where we're taking things that we already know and have done. So Jonathan, who I showed you before, for perhaps the last 10 years, has been teaching not only students, but he's also been teaching actors. So if you go to Stratford, probably a third to 40% of the actors you see will have been trained by Jonathan in how to bring the skills and the craft and the values of the ensemble of the rehearsal room into school. And so they're a key part of this relationship. And the RSC has an outstanding record of the learning partnership and working with over 1,000 schools across the UK. So the creativity in this was to bring the cultural values and the stimulus of working with the most amazing actors and directors and writers in Stratford, but also to link it up with our strength, which is for 25 years at Warwick we have run distance learning. We have 1,600 MBAs who only learn at a distance. Therefore our platforms, our technology, etc., our knowledge of how we support people. And what we've put together, the creative spark in this really, is taking things that we already know, the power of the ensemble, the power of virtual learning, and putting those together. So we build on the strengths that we already have, but then we give ourselves an immense challenge. Because when we do this, in the exciting moments of rehearsal and play, we do this face-to-face as we did with Neil next door. What we're trying to do now is work with teachers around the world, but we're going to try and do it on a virtual basis and build a community. So people bringing back their challenges and their successes in the classroom. And the research that we commissioned showed that half of the children in the world are taught Shakespeare. Maybe not as excitingly as we hope now that we can help teachers, we can give them the confidence and the tools and the techniques to do something different on that. Let me just see if I can get this to run for a second. So this is a teaching Shakespeare.
There's so many wonderful things about Shakespeare stories. They're just good stories. My students are enamored from the beginning to the end.
No student or teacher can understand a scene from Shakespeare in isolation. You have to see how that scene fits into the whole story.
The way I use storytelling in my classroom is to set up scenes. We've used wishes in class to review the entire story after we've gotten close to the end, as well as to introduce the story to students who are unfamiliar with it.
A wish is a whole class storytelling activity where the students become all the different characters within the story. They become the places, they become the objects, and they become the action.
To begin with the wish, you need to have a large circle and an open space. You need to make sure you've cleared desks, tables, bags out of the way.
Once, in a town called Verona, there were two great households, the Capulets and the Montagues.
The teacher narrates the story. They come up and act out a little bit of the story, sometimes with embedded quotations from the text if they're confident.
So, teaching Shakespeare, and hopefully if you have children or friends who are teachers, you'll help us promote this new source of knowledge and our greatest living, or our greatest writer, not living. So on Thursday with Jonathan in the morning with about 75 MBAs from around the world. In the morning we will take you through Shakespeare's Lear in terms of hubris and the challenges of pride and all the psychodynamics of being a leader. In the afternoon, is Marina here? Yes, okay. We will, I apologise for my pronunciation, we will try something new with Antigone's, Sophocles' Antigone. Now should it be Antigone? Is that a little bit better? Antigone, thank you. I'll practice for Thursday. Great, okay. And so here, not only are we doing this with teachers, but we're also spreading this into our classes. We have the Warwick Writing Programme, led by the wonderful David Morley, enchantment, a Rhony background, a musical and wonderful poet about nature. We have the Warwick Writing Prize, that's Peter Paul's won it last year with colours, that's Mike Rosen, who was the chair. So we have this power of writing, and we now have a relationship with the Design Council, and interestingly, this is a mix of both the skills of the designer, but also the behavioural science. So we have now the first major behavioural science group in Europe after Chicago. And Nick Chater works with the Nudge program, with the Cabinet, and is that still working? Yes. And also now is working with Matt and Matt's teams on the design challenges. Some amazing things in terms of design into society, rather than simply product. And the interesting link here is Sir George Cox said to me when we were working on this originally, maybe design is how you will find you can build a bridge between creativity and innovation. And so therefore on the wheel we have design now alongside creativity as a way of explaining it to people. So that's the wheel. With this we're therefore able to explain to people a lot of activities we're able to frame it and pull it together, the Shakespeare, the creativity networks, the interdisciplinarity, and the writing program. Writing program now, we will have, by Christmas, we will be having in-course formal tuition in academic and creative writing for over 4,000 students at the business school. And the one I wanted just to pick up, and then I'll just draw to some conclusions, is 2 programs I've been running where you're looking at both, if you like, the cognitive but also the creative. And I don't know about you, but so many programs, when I look at this, I realise that we only emphasise the cognitive, the thinking parts of the learning outcomes. We rarely tackle or target or work on the affective, on the emotion, on the sensitivities. And this program with law and business students has no PowerPoint, has no lectures, is all about reading, media, performance. We have a theatre coach in at the beginning, and all the way through. And then secondly, we've launched interdisciplinarity, so we have 4 modules that we launched across the university. This is one I led on, Images of Creativity, where it's both appreciating the other, so again echoes with Neil, but also the critical and academic approach, if you like, to it. And so here the students will have sociology, English, design practitioner, film entrepreneur, a chemist inventor. People always love this one, creative accounting. They thought they went out with Enron. And Louise, I've supported her. She brings a rap poet into her accounting classes. She reads poems about accounts, poems about accountants, and poems by accountants. So that's creative accounting. And then we have a film director. A theatre director, Anushka from RFC. So a very rapid case of how we're trying to build these things together. So two sets of lessons. One about the organisation. So there's something classically here about making it visible and making it emotionally attractive, the ambition, but also framing it. And therefore people being able to understand where it all fits together. And classically, Roger, is it better? What's the cost of me switching and doing some of this? Can I try it on a small basis? Are there key people who will help us? Clearly, strengths-based, as Neil talked about before, the resource-based view is absolutely critical. So we've taken things that we know or do or have links with inside, across the university and outside, and then we're just doing it, large and small, just finding opportunities entrepreneurially, and definitely not looking for the big creative new picture, the breakthrough, but also interested in recreation and the incremental. For the individual, now I'm just, after working with Jonathan, so convinced that learning when you're sat down is not the best way to do it. Sorry about that. And Neil had us on our feet. So the physical, the kinesthetic, but also the link with emotions. The power of others. So when students started working, an engineer, a mathematician, a philosopher, talking about the same things, they got a stronger sense of themselves, and they got a wonderful sense of the other people. And the processes in the craft of the artist and the creative. So going back to those pictures at the beginning, what we did was we got the artists to stand by their print, and a group would parade around, so a promenade exhibition, and the artists would explain how they tackled the commission that was given to them by the business school. And that in itself was fascinating for them because they hadn't really sort of articulated that before. So making these things accessible and not frightening, sort of easy routes in. So to finish with a couple of reflections. Do we try to put creativity into programs, into our work, or do we run it in parallel? Do we have a creativity department? Do we have creativity degrees? I've got great respect for what you're doing at City, but this is one question where we have decided we will integrate. Got to be very aware of counter-influences, so the REF, the research exercise, that the assessment and the curriculum in teaching, so we only see students for a small percentage of their total formation in their 3 or 4 years at Warwick. People want to know, what's your definition of creativity? If I had a definition of creativity, it wouldn't be creative, would it? And you've got all these wonderful ideas, Grier, but I think you want to focus. And I said, well, I quite like a lack of focus, but that doesn't go down too well, because how does this work with KPIs? Well, how do you measure if we've suddenly turned everyone into people who are more aware or more open to creativity. And I think the final thing is, as in this room, you know, so how do you live with the heterogeneity of learners and creatives? And I think that's where you get the benefit from diversity. So it's kind of a loose and tight thing. Let the freedom for the different crafts, the different arts, the different approaches, the different disciplines be a creative stimulus, but you come together with sort of shared similar values. Thank you.